One of the things I wanted to touch on is you've been doing a lot of work attending both Surge and FSOC to take a pulse of how we are experiencing diversity and inclusion here at the campus, and you're working towards bringing a vice president of diversity and inclusion, which I think is a major step. Even you're ahead of the university in that particular regard. And I wanted to see, how's that going? How's the search going for our new VP of diversity and inclusion?
Yeah, no, good question, Hugo. And look, this is something that, early on, when I arrived here at LaGuardia late last summer, in conversation with different, lots of different folks in different areas of the college, there was this theme that started to become kind of clear across the LaGuardia community, that there were real concerns that it wasn't a really fully inclusive environment, and people were feeling, in some cases, professional people that they had been passed up for opportunities, like you couldn't advance. You have some folks in the faculty ranks feeling like the sort of conditions or the issues around tenure and promotion were skewed or biased. I mean, it's in sort of different areas. You wonder about the student experience as well. Do all students feel really welcome? We have so many, we always boast about it. And I mean, it's amazing that we have students from 158 countries. We have students of very sort of diverse backgrounds. We have students who, with the Center for the Program for Deaf Adults, we have a great number of students, for example, who are deaf and hard of hearing. A lot of diversity all across the campus in many forms. But, again, it sort of resonated for me, these voices saying, yeah, that all sounds good. It looks nice on the website, but is it a truly kind of supportive, inclusive place where I feel welcome, I feel valued, and everybody feels the same way, right? That same level of I'm included, I'm valued, I matter, I count. And that's hard, that's a challenge in any large organization, but we just have to be really kind of focused on it, committed to it. And so, yeah, you could say this is sort of one of the themes I've been dealing with since day one. Now, to answer your question, Hugo, yes, I just did the formal charge to the search committee a week ago today. That committee is being led by Jason Hendrickson from the English department. Jason and his committee are gonna, at this point, I get sort of removed from the process, right? But they will start vetting the candidates and do interviews, and then, present to me for my consideration a group of finalists, I hope within 6 to 8 weeks. We posted this thing far and wide. Like, we did a big posting, national, like, I want people to know about this. And we want the best, most highly qualified people to apply. And so, yeah, we're in that process now. We will find somebody great. That person will serve in my cabinet, will work very closely with me, just because I want someone who's out there, ear to the ground, picking up on this stuff. But I also want this is a job about solutions. We've had a lot of studies, coach surveys, faculty surveys, the most recent survey of the staff engagement, which maybe we can talk about later in the show. These are really essential, right? But we've studied this a lot. We've got something like 16, 17 groups, including, you mentioned a couple, FSOC and Surge, which you're right. I get a lot out of being invited to go to those meetings and get to hear what people are saying. But pretty soon we got to pivot here, Hugo, and work on solutions. And that's why, I'm really keen on this position. We got to start doing things. I'll give you a simple little example. It's a great story. In response to the recent, increase in really horrific anti-Asian biased crimes, hate crimes here in the city and around the country, colleagues of ours over in the Wellness Center thought to themselves, hey, what can we do to help LaGuardia students who are Asian or Asian American, who are feeling that sort of anxiety, stress, the tension from all that, from the surge in these anti-Asian crimes, this anti-Asian violence. So they set up a support group of students that meets regularly with a counselor. And it's already up and running this semester. So the LaGuardia students are welcome to join that group and talk about their concerns, talk about their reaction to this, wave of violence and discrimination. But it's an outlet, right? And it's in the confines of the Wellness Center where there's appropriate support and counseling. So that's a response, right? That's like seeing a problem and doing something concrete to help our students. And I just, we got to do more of that.
Yeah, I mean, I remember, before you're coming, and I was trying to work on this at CUNY Central, that I came back with the fact that a lot of training was necessary, particularly microaggressions. Obviously, and training for workplace bullying, so that people, because I think one of the main interventions is that everybody sees it happening, and so people speaking out is a way to to bring attention to the issue, or to bring attention to the person who's engaging in it, to understand that it's not okay. So hopefully, when that person comes forward, that may be, obviously that costs money. And I remember when Oswald Frazier was the HR person at the time before he left, I was asking for this, and it was about money, and I was willing to go look for that money, and it's out there. I know my alma mater, FIU, actually got a big grant, whether it was from the NEH or it was federal, and but I think that may be another solution. I know that when we've talked about solutions, we know that we have to go get money, and we've talked about, you've been doing these podcasts where you're turning everybody on to the fact that the development office or the grants office, they can't do it alone. It's a combination. It's a team effort, right? We have the ideas for programming. They know where we can go get the money. We have to write these things together. But it's it's part of that process, right? Finding the money to do the things we want to do.
And for something like this, you're right. We got to find the money, because we do need, train. Probably we should think about bringing in some outside experts who do training, who have done very specific, like people with a proven track record in doing professional development, doing training around these issues. And to bring in a consultant or someone who would, our new director of DEI could coordinate all that and, put a program together, these events, and work with Ron Edwards, our new head of HR. It's obviously a top priority for Ron. He and I talk about it. In fact, Ron Edwards, for folks, he just started about, 6 weeks ago as our new head of HR. And he's already met twice with the 3 chairs of the President's Advisory Council on Diversity, Equity, Inclusion. His next meeting is going to be with the entire council. So Ron is working on this, already. And Ron, as an HR matter, is going to work very closely with the person we bring in to direct our DEI efforts. But yeah, you're right, Hugo. It can take some money to bring in outside experts and to do the sort of programming that will move the needle.
All right. Well, again, you were talking a little bit about how this might affect students. And we know that there's a lot of things already affecting students, right? The pandemic, obviously. When you were mentioning before that one of the things we've noticed is a reduction in students of color or African American students, attendance. We've lost numbers there. We recently had this campaign where we were asked to volunteer to call students during the break and check in on them. I volunteered. I made I can't remember how many calls. I think was it 25. We were supposed to make 25. Right. And a couple of things I picked up on. I left a lot of messages. I had contact with a few students, and it was always interesting to see what they needed. But I noticed the GPAs on those students were not strong. They were not the strongest GPAs, and I didn't pick up on that. I missed the training. So nobody ever took me aside and say, look, we're looking for the folks who are struggling to give them the greatest support. You want to talk a little bit about that campaign? This was your idea, I'm guessing, to make these calls?
It was somebody's idea, and I don't want credit for it. I will say Paul Arcario, our provost, has really run the campaign. And, at first, there's several great parts to this story, Hugo. The first is that Paul put the word out to faculty and staff, could we have some volunteers? Anyone want to do this? It's, you made the call. It's like 25 students doesn't sound like a lot. It's a lot when you're trading phone calls and voicemails, and it's hard people leave messages, the number doesn't work, whatever. It takes a fair amount of time. So let's say at the first go round, something like 50 people sign up. He puts out another email, 75. In the end, 110 faculty and staff, people like our own Hugo Fernandez from What's Going On, that famous radio show, made these calls. And that's awesome because that's like right there over 2,500 students you're going to reach. 25 students, 110 callers. Then we added 28 of our great LaGuardia peer mentors, who are, of course, students themselves. So that's students calling students for a total of 138 people making calls. Again, about 25 students per. Now, you don't reach everybody for reasons that you know from having made the calls. Sometimes it just like, again, the number's not quite right, number's out of service. We get a whole analysis of all the calls. And sometimes you speak to a family member, leave a message. Sometimes you just leave a message. So far, okay, and some of us, I'm a straggler, so I still have some calls to make. I'm not done with my list. But anyway, we've reached and spoken to, like not a text, an actual conversation with over 1,200 of students. 1,253 to be precise as of this morning. And what we're getting in terms of feedback is just terrific. I mean, if students are saying, I got to turn to you, Hugo, and you tell your version of the story. But people are like, what? Why are you calling? You're calling from LaGuardia?
Yeah, I felt like I was a bill collector or something. They were like, yeah.
And then you say, we're just calling to check up, make sure everything's okay. Students feel, well, they're relieved to know it's not a bill collector. No, students are really gratified. And, we get really positive feedback from the students and the callers get a lot out of it too. I can't tell you the number of people of the 138 that have made calls. They send me an email saying, hey, I feel good about doing this. The students at the other end of the phone felt good about the conversation because they think it's making them feel LaGuardia cares for them. That's the point. Yeah, we're more than just the place where you're trying to get your degree. We're reaching out. We're calling you at home, calling you on your cell because we want to know how you're doing. We feel terrible about the impacts of this pandemic and what you're going through, but we care. And that message has come through loud and clear to the students we've reached.
Yeah, obviously it felt, I will tell you, it felt good for the few that I actually was able to connect with. Just the fact to say, we do care, and how can I help you? What are you struggling with? I did try to get them support. Obviously, I would have liked a lot more people to pick up the phone, but I get it. I'm beleaguered with phone calls all the time about, the warranty on my car or whatever it is. So, but the fact that was there to some decision making as far as looking for students who needed the most support. We're not going after, I'm guessing the President's Society students, they were not on that list. We weren't calling like Phi Theta Kappa. We were calling folks who need support.
Right. Yeah, because those students, this is hard, right? We all know this. This is the kind of, the third semester of doing this college thing online. And just because people have figured out Zoom and Blackboard and some of the platforms, maybe they're over some of the technical hurdles, but it's still not what you signed up for. We know from the survey, we did a survey, this, Hugo, back in the fall, towards just before the holidays, of LaGuardia students about how they felt about this whole online thing because of the pandemic. And a couple statistics stand out to me from that exercise. One is LaGuardia students rated basically their experience with faculty higher than other community college students, and much higher, dare I say, with the students at senior colleges. And in this area, they thought that the LaGuardia faculty was keeping them to the same or higher standards, was providing them with support, were providing clarity, keeping things moving forward, and doing a very good job at, again, given the limitations of Zoom or Blackboard or whatever, at doing their very best, again, to keep up academic standards, to keep the courses rigorous, to keep everything online and keep students moving forward. So our faculty were rated by our students in this sort of online world higher than average compared to other colleges. And another takeaway was that 64% of the respondents, and there was a pretty good response rate to this survey, that 64% of our LaGuardia students were hoping that for the fall, they could come back to campus for in-person or online, hybrid. In other words, they're okay. A lot of them are, more than you might think, are okay with a little of both, but most want to be able to come back to campus for some of their classes. They're not saying I need all 4 or 5 of my courses in person, but I mean, there's some students who want that. But there's a kind of middle ground of LaGuardia students that are okay with some in person, some hybrid, right? And that's encouraging because it also means students are figuring out how to make it work. Not everybody. Again, there's a cohort of students that simply want 100% in person. But there's a growing number of students like, hey, I could do both. Again, what does that mean, Hugo? It means they figured it out and it's working. Because maybe they got kids at home. And schlepping down on the 7 train to school can be a hassle, right? Depending on your schedule. Maybe it means they're working. Let's remember, 46% of our LaGuardia students go part-time. In most cases, they are going part-time because they have obligations that prevent them from going full-time, like a job to help, mom pay the rent, or maybe they've got children at home or a grandma or somebody to take care of. So for so many of them, the online option can really be helpful. It can enable access, and it can enable, we got to get this right for the fall, but the right courses online for certain students let them keep up their pace in terms of, their pace of completion toward the degree. Because, Hugo, too often, because of the way we have a very traditional schedule at LaGuardia, right? The bulk of our classes are between 11 and 2, Monday through Thursday. I mean, you can't find an empty classroom if you try, right? Burhan has them all booked up at that time.
Yep.
So that's a scheduling concentration meant for a full-time student who probably just got out of a high school in Queens, is coming to LaGuardia, is going to transfer to Baruch or Hunter or wherever. Great. But that's not a convenient schedule if you've got a job and need to work at that time, right? Or if you got other obligations.
So you like to eat lunch.
You like to eat lunch. Right. So again, we had this discussion earlier today, with a group of people, how we think about scheduling post-COVID and how we think about more course offerings, if they're going to be in person or hybrid, and synchronous, later in the afternoon, on Fridays, actually, without getting in the way of all the great stuff we do at the Center for Teaching and Learning on Fridays, but Fridays and Saturdays. That's about access. That's what community colleges are built to do. Provide access to students who are not the 19-year-old recent grad from, aviation, right? Who's ready to go full-time in the middle of the day. So real interesting feedback we're getting from students about what they hope the fall looks like.
Yeah, and it's also interesting, faculty wondering what it's looked like. I mean, when you talk about a lot of things you talked about triggered, I'm going to try the HyperFlex if they give me a shot, and I'll be interested to see if students are going to take me up on it. In particular, I'd like to be able to visit museums again because I hate turning out the lights to look at art. I wanted to go into the dark room. Now I'm being told that's not going to happen unless I guess I put an infrared lens on my camera. But I want to take a quick station break. It's 1:29. The show is the famous What's Going On. You heard it from the mouth of the president right there. I'm your host, Hugo Fernandez, here on LaGuardia Web Radio WLGR. And my guest today is President Adams, who's checking from LaGuardia Community College, who's checking in his monthly visit to us here on the show, which we're grateful for. Though I feel like I'm competing, including against you, because you've got a podcast. Now you're doing a town hall that's coming up. I've noticed I'm not invited, except as a guest, and that's okay because people probably are going to get enough of me between the Streamathon, which I would like you to maybe give us a little video tidbit to say, hey, everybody, give to the Faculty Council Scholarship, Streamathon, that kind of thing. As well as what's, this, that on Friday, we've got the Latin American Studies, Latinx conference that's going to be happening, which is going to be exciting, including you're going to say a few words. The Executive Vice Chancellor is going to be there. Everybody's going to be there.
I do, as requested by Professor Ana Maria Fernandez. I would not miss that event. I'm looking forward to it. She has some really amazing speakers, by the way, coming to this thing.
Well,
It's gonna.
yeah, the panels were put together. I mean, Rebecca Talley from Social Science, she's one of our co-directors. She's put a great panel together. Joyce Sanchez Taylor from the English department, who heads Latinx, she put together her panel. And of course, Dr. Will Fulton, Professor Fulton, I like to call him Dr. Funk. I don't think he particularly likes that. He's going to be putting some music on, including records that he got from my dad's old collection here. Some records actually from Julio Cuyazo, who was a famous conga player for who was it, Tito Puente, who was my dad's babalao. So we're going to have some good stuff going. Yeah, everybody's putting together a lot of great things.
That's
But
Friday.
yeah, what I'm saying is we get a lot of you. We get a lot of
That's
your
Friday.
airtime.
You get tired of me, man. I'll be there
No,
Friday. And we've got a big event. Holly Porter Morgan from our environmental sciences program has a big event Thursday and Friday also. LaGuardia is hosting. Here comes a plug. LaGuardia is hosting the first ever CUNY conference on climate change education. That's CCCE or 4CE. CUNY conference on climate change education. Holly Porter Morgan and friends putting this thing together, and our keynote speaker is none other than Bill McKibben, who built all of our awareness of climate change with this famous book, The End of Nature, back in the 80s. He's going to open that up Thursday night, and that thing goes Thursday and Friday. And so we've got two incredible conferences in 1 week. Exciting stuff here at LaGuardia Community College.
Yeah, very exciting. One of the things I wanted to share for the second half hour, or save for the second half hour and kind of hit the ground running with it, is your impressions and your thoughts and plans. I'm sure you're talking to your folks about the state budget and how that's all rolled out, and how do you think it's going to impact the next fiscal year? Thoughts you're having about it?
Right. Generally speaking, I think there's a lot of good news in there. There's good news for LaGuardia, and kind of more importantly than the institution, for our students and their families, and for families across Queens, households across Queens that have been struggling now for over a year because of the pandemic. So it cuts sort of two different directions, Hugo. And forgive me, this is going to be a high level general thing because we haven't gotten the fine print from the CUNY central office yet, right?
Of course.
But we were pushing for something with our government affairs team, especially Claudia Chan and Robert Jaffe. So with their help, I met with our Queens delegation to the state Senate and to the state assembly. And fortunately, I know some of the members who've served for a while because of my own service in Albany years ago, like Senator Toby Ann Stavitsky and others. So we had these meetings and we pushed for one thing. We pushed for like 7, but there was one that was really important, which was asking them to give us the same basic funding in our state subsidy as they did last year, and not tie our subsidy to our enrollment, to our FTEs. Mathematically, why would that be important? People who teach commercial photography can do math.
Are you asking me to answer?
Yes.
Well, enrollment's down, right?
What's
that? So we're not going to get enrollment is down.
Like our enrollment's been on a decline, and so we have 12,000 students this semester, which is a problem. We've got to rebuild it. But the thing is, if the funding is based on your enrollment and your enrollment's declining, you're going to get less money. So we said, please don't do the standard formula. Please just give us what you gave us last year when our enrollment was higher. And they did that to the tune of 98%. It's called the 98% hold harmless. And so that was put into the governor's, that was put into the budget process. This idea of
for this House budget.
Yeah, for the budget now that just got passed last week.
Right.
For saying don't put that normal formula based on headcount, but really on FTEs, because we'll be penalized by, we'll get the double whammy, less tuition collected and less state subsidy. Give us the state aid you gave us last year. They did. So that was really important. That's going to help us. And they also, to the extent that moving forward, there's a calculation based on FTE, they raise it by $50. So it's now $29.97 or almost $3,000 per FTE. And that's important for next year when they go back to the regular formula. So our formula funding is better than we were we're anticipating. It's not great, but there's less damage done. Another big thing they did is really helpful for our students when they transfer. It's called the TAP gap, right? There's a big problem in the senior colleges in CUNY and SUNY where TAP was not covering the full cost anymore because of tuition increases, and TAP staying, the amount being flat. And this was creating deficit problems for SUNY and CUNY. So the budget also fixed that problem to not 100%, but to a significant degree. And while that doesn't affect LaGuardia directly, it definitely helps our students when they transfer to a senior college and use their TAP in the senior college, right? There is about $100 million now, which isn't really enough, but it's, as Mayor David Dingetts used to say, it's better than a poke in the eye with a sharp stick. So it's $100 million, not like $1 billion, somebody said, but that's for capital only, right? And that's spread across the system. I think, in other words, CUNY's getting $100 million, so we will fight for our share of that for a new commercial photography studio and nothing else. That's the only thing we're going to do. No, seriously, that will help down the road. We're also now waiting to see, Hugo, what happens with the city budget, because the city fiscal year, like our fiscal year, kicks in July 1. Yep. So I've already met with all our council members. I've got a meeting coming up. Actually, this week, we're going to tour C building. Councilman Jimmy Van Bramer, who's provided a lot of funding because we're in his district for the exterior of C building. So I'm going to see him later in the week.
And
but we went to borough
president. Yeah.
Yeah, we went to the borough. Well, we went to the current borough president.
Right.
We went to the members of city council to try to get funding in the upcoming city budget. Now we won't know about that until, and we went actually for some funding for archives as well. Richard Lieberman has a great proposal. We won't know that officially until July 1 when the city budget kicks in. But to your question, we did better than we thought up in Albany. And I got to give you the other side of the story. I mean, look, because of let's say getting less damage to our budget from Albany, things staying somewhat stable. Now the federal aid that comes in from the Biden administration and what's left over from CARES Act from last year, and CRISA, which is a long acronym from something that came out of Congress in December, those funds will be able to help us. They'll go farther because the state funding kind of stabilized things. So we're going to have federal aid, less damage from the state, in fact, some help, and then we'll see how we do with the city. Now, the problem is we're still looking at this point, a $15 million, that's with an M, $15 million deficit for our fiscal year ending June 30th. So how do we patch together? We're going to work with the CUNY Central Office to see what we can do, because you have to have a balanced budget, right? In fact, you're really supposed to start building up reserves. We don't have any reserves. We have no rainy day fund. We have nothing like that. So we got to start building that up again, too, in future years. So it's a work in progress, but the state budget was helpful. Just to put it in kind of like, bold headline typeface. It doesn't solve all our problems, but it was helpful.
I had made an assumption, though this particular, what we've been going through is very different than I guess I've experienced. Because I experienced, I was alive when, we had the embargo, for God's sakes. And I remember what happened. And I remember the Reagan 80s when near the end when things went bad, and the Bush recession, and Clinton had his. Everybody's had their turn. And what typically happens is that suddenly a bunch of money comes in for jobs programming, and community colleges, at least we used to be the co-op college, right?
Right. And
we can't really claim that anymore. But this has been a very different period of time. And for example, we would have expected people losing their jobs. The numbers would have exploded in our enrollment, and it's actually been the other way around. After the vaccinations, maybe this will change. But are you expecting this from the feds? Are you expecting possibly? I know that he's, the plan that the president's got that he's trying to push through now, $3.5 billion, would technically make community colleges free. That's one of the things he's talking about. What is this looking like, you think?
It's hard I'm not an expert in what's going on down in Washington, Hugo. I am paying more attention to the city and state budgets, right? Federal aid that comes from Washington will go to the state, to the city, to CUNY. It'll go to CUNY Central, and then we'll figure out what we're allocated, and frankly, they'll tell us what we can use it for. And if there's some flexibility, that'll be helpful, but we won't be able to. We're not going to get a blank check, right? And I just don't know enough it's dangerous to speculate about an infrastructure bill, that the president wants to advance, and the degree to which included in that could be workforce training money. There is a proposal in Congress that I've been interested in for a number of years. It's stalled for a long time, which would use Pell Grants, basically enable federal financial aid, which is Pell, that they could be used with certain limitations for workforce training. Like, you could imagine being able to use your Pell, your federal financial aid, to take our training in data analytics, or in, over in ACE, we've got a great number of programs from EMT, medical billing and coding, farm tech, phlebotomy, a whole bunch of really good certification programs, and get you entry-level work in healthcare. But as I probably mentioned to you on this show before, their average tuition is about $1,200. If you're out, in Elmhurst, listening to this show right now, scratching your head about getting training, getting a job, you don't have $1,200 to come down to LaGuardia and take that program. And there's no state, city, or federal financial aid to help you, which to me is just a huge problem. So there is this legislation. They call it Workforce Pell. It has different names, kicking around in Congress, that would use the Pell Grant system, right, to provide federal funding so that you could take that workforce training program. And in many cases, by the way, we can design those programs to be what we'll call credit eligible, where you could take the training program, get the job, and pick up 2 or 3 credits as what we'll call a stackable credential. So you can come back to LaGuardia, and work toward the degree. But see, right now, a lot of our students we would normally have, they got to pay the rent. They need to work and cover and pay take care of the rent and the food and stuff like that. And they need the training to do that. And they cannot, unfortunately, they don't have the luxury of being able to not work and go to LaGuardia full time, right? If you think about the economic consequences of the pandemic, 635,000 jobs destroyed. Now, some of those are coming back. Retail starts to come back. Tourism starts to come back little by little. Unemployment now about 13%, 13.2% in New York City. That's high. It's bad. It's really bad when you're in double-digit unemployment. But at least it's nothing like the 20+% it was at the height of the pandemic. It's also nothing like the 3.4% it was before the pandemic, right? So our unemployment rate surged. It's slowly coming back down. But when it's 13%, citywide, is probably 15, 17% in Queens, or 14% in Queens. So this is just the reality we face. We've got to find a way to help our students, or help Queens residents, get the training they need, get back into the workforce, and then come get their degree at LaGuardia. It's kind of almost a 3-step process. But it starts with giving them financial support so they can take that phlebotomy program, take that Cisco A+N+ to learn networking fundamentals, and get a job. And as I say, when you come to ACE and we give that training, we are going to give you a warm LaGuardia hug, a big embrace. So you go and get the job, we help you get the job, and then you come back, work on your English, maybe you need CUNY Start, Math Start, fine, we could do that, and then get into a degree program and get the degree and move on. So, we've got to do much more of that. We got to be mindful of the economic conditions that our communities, the communities that we serve, are facing, and how it's a hindrance to enrollment, which was your point. I mean, Hugo, all across this country, community college enrollment is down in many places double digits, right? And it's totally counterintuitive. You're right. Normally in a recession, enrollment actually grows. Now in CUNY, interestingly, graduate school enrollment to CUNY is rising, has risen, and this 4-year or senior college is basically flat. But community colleges across CUNY, we've been hammered.
Right.
We've been hammered.
We got about 15 minutes left, or a little less, because we're going to put on a little more of Bob Marley.
Yeah, but, that's a good idea.
But, one of the things is I had a recent area meeting, and there are many faculty who are interested in continuing the online experience, at least some portion of their workload to be online. They're interested. I also brought up the fact that would we be interested in considering offering a degree which would be certified if the majority of credits, or let's say more than 51% of credits, were delivered online? Because my understanding is we're in a window right now where obviously we've got to get that cleared by state ed, by middle states, by the feds, CUNY obviously. But we have an opportunity here. And I was thinking, for example, I mean, I do teach, obviously I teach photography, and I'd love to see an online photography program. In fact, I'm even engaging in critiques right now on Zoom with some folks from my alma mater down in Florida, but as well as in the fine arts, if we could possibly deliver, because we talked about this last time we were on the show. Some of our students are actually here because we're offering them classes online, and they couldn't take advantage of us before. So is this something that's percolating in academic affairs or the
Absolutely. I
fourth and
think
fifth floor?
yes. The answer is yes. It's more than percolating, because we do have this window to get the necessary approval. So just recently, we did get approval for the first ever complete online LaGuardia degree. It's in the business department. It's a
Right.
business administration degree, totally online. And this is the work of Mike Napolitano, department chair, faculty, staff, program directors, Paul Arcario, Dion. I mean, a whole host of people. But it was done, and we can do more. So imagine on our website version of the catalog that you live in Hollis, New Hampshire, as opposed to Hollis, Queens, and you can be a LaGuardia student. That you live in Astoria, Washington. I believe there's an Astoria in the state of Washington. Astoria, Washington, and you can be a LaGuardia. That's the other side of the country, Pacific Northwest.
Right.
And you could take your, a fine arts program online, because LaGuardia is in New York City, in the center of so much great cultural, in the world of fine arts, or in photography, commercial photography, so many other disciplines. This is New York, right? So maybe you do your associate degree from Astoria, Washington, here with our program online, and then you transfer, sure enough, to Queens College, and you can actually rent an apartment in the real Astoria and finish your degree in New York City. But you see, LaGuardia plays a role because of our online program in getting you here.
You're having fun with this, aren't you?
I mean, on our next episode, I will give you a list of, all of these places.
Yeah, I know. Well, I'm just saying, and again, one of the reasons I signed up for Hyperflex was, you and Paul have gone a long way to work with us. And when I say us, I mean faculty, particularly in the spring, running classes that would have typically not run, so that adjuncts could keep their health care and keep jobs. And when Paul asked us, I'll give, I'll meet you halfway, Paul. I'll give it a shot, even though I've heard mixed things about whether students, when they're given the option of being physically at the college or at home, they tend to go for staying at home. But part of me loves the idea of getting to the college before everybody else does too, so I can get reacquainted with how this is all going to work. How are we going to physically be in this space? I've got my shots, and I'm willing to. I kind of like the idea of being followed around by a camera. I'll be honest. Where you're moving and the camera follows you, and I'm going to see how far I can push that. But yeah, I'll see how many other folks come along with me. I know that we're not at the 25%, and we're working towards that 25%. And but it's a game. We've again, for folks who see the positive even in the worst case scenarios, there's been a lot. The game has changed,
Right.
and now we.
No, but no, I wanna thank you publicly before all the listeners of what's going on for stepping up to try Hyperflex. Because we need more. Seriously, we need more faculty like you, Hugo, who want to try Hyperflex. And I do want to let listeners know, it is not a Peloton. It is not a fancy machine gets you in shape, like where you do a lot of stretching to prepare for some kind of yoga thing. It's not that kind of hyperflex. It's a modality that is new, and Hugo's going to try it. But you know what? 13 months ago, plenty of faculty were concerned about Blackboard, not familiar with it, right?
Right.
Eric and the team over at the Center for Teaching and Learning, seminars, workshops, here's the deal. People figured it out, and now Blackboard is natural to people.
Right.
Hyperflex may sound daunting, but that's just the name. It's what it's called. But the idea that camera's following you and you've got students live and in person in a classroom with you and other students remote at the same time, and maybe it's being recorded for asynchronous use as well by other students at a third level, right?
Right.
So, and by the way, there could be students in the classroom down the hallway for whom it's live in real time, i.e. it's synchronous and they're on campus, but they don't see Hugo in person because they're down the hallway. I mean, the possibilities because of the technology are fantastic. And I will tell you, Dan Lemons, who's the interim president of Lehman College, said recently, up in the Bronx, they've outfitted 75 classrooms at Lehman for HyperFlex. So Lehman faculty are into this. And again, maybe Blackboard was new to a lot of people 13 months ago. It's not anymore. 13 months from now, Hugo's not going to be Hugo's going to be talking about this HyperFlex thing. And there'll be dozens, hundreds of other LaGuardia faculty saying, what's so special about Hugo Fernandez and HyperFlex? Anyone can do it.
I look forward to that.
Well, thank you for stepping up to try it.
Like I said, I like the idea of being followed around by the camera. I guess it helps to be a narcissist sometimes, right?
That's okay. It's really we're going to outfit. We can get funding from the CUNY central office to put the technology in a bunch of classrooms.
Right.
And the more interest there is from faculty like Hugo, he said in a thinly veiled request for more faculty to step up and volunteer for HyperFlex, please speak to Paul Arcario.
Right.
The more interest there is, the more we can go to CUNY and get the money. We don't have to pay for it. They'll pay for it to put these cameras and other devices, screens and whatnot in our classrooms, So we got to build it. We got to build it and try it. And I think it's going to work.
Oh, I'm going to get a screen too? I didn't realize.
I just said that. I just want to get a bunch of gear. I want to get
I always want to
get old gear.
I asked Henry years ago for a big flat screen TV as opposed to a projector, but and I'm still waiting for that one. But that's okay.
Yeah, I cannot speak to that. But that's before my time.
Like a true politician. Okay, so we've got about 3 minutes left before we turn on the Marley. Any last words you want to say, or anything you want to?
I want to do a shout out to the team of people who've been working on our Middle State self-study, Hugo. I read most of it over the weekend, the first draft, right? I got a couple more chapters before me, but it's amazing. It is so much work. This is all volunteers, as you know. The co-chairs, Reem and Justin, Reem Jafar and Justin Rogers Cooper and Navalera, of course. The three of them have done an amazing amount of work, but each one of these chapters, they run 20, 30 pages, and there's 7 of them. This thing is about 150 pages right now, which is actually too long. They're going to be editing it in the next few months. But boy, the work that's gone into this thing, it's so sophisticated. I think we're in very good shape because, we're sort of coming in towards the end of April, and we've got time, what remains of this semester and in the summer, to continue to work on this thing. But just looking at it over the weekend, I was blown away by the effort, the thoughtfulness, the research. I mean, we've got more to do, but it's really looking good. And so shout out and big thanks to all of them and all of you listening who have been helping out with the various standards, the 7 standards, 7 chapters. And then, commercial break here. We have May is going to be Middle States Month at LaGuardia Community College, Long Island City, New York. And that means we're going to have more competition for this show in terms of viewer attention for my podcast and for my town halls, because we will be doing 7 town hall meetings about the Middle States self-study, a town hall for every standard. And we need everybody to go, as many as you can, read the drafts, give your comments, be helpful to the volunteers. This is going to be awesome.
Yeah, I think I've got to be at the one for governance. So look out. Shared governance, excuse me.
Yeah. Yeah, no, the topics are really, and look, there's stuff here it's a good process because we are going to identify some room for improvement. No place is perfect. And we'll be saying, here's what we've learned, here's how we're doing with respect to our goals, here's how we're doing with respect to giving life to our mission, fulfilling our pledge. And in the end, each section concludes with sort of a set of observations and suggestions, recommendations. And that's like a commitment before middle states that we're going to move forward, to advance those recommendations. We're making our own recommendations to ourselves, so got to live up to that, right? Anyway,
Self-study.
it's a great process, and it's looking good. But I really hope everybody will find the time to make it to some of those town halls on the various standards in May.
Yeah, we only get one chance every 10 years to write
Now
ourselves.
because it's so much fun, now they do it every 8 years. They changed it. So now it's like once every 8 years. But
Well, there's the middle report. There's all kind. Middle states never really ends.
no,
Like
which is fair.
assessments and PPRs and
No,
PLOs.
it's important. It's important.
It matters.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're out of time. I mean, thanks again for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us, to talk about whatever I wanted to talk about, and getting a little bit of time to talk about what you want.
Yeah, listen, you always get, you're fair. You give me a shot. You give me a moment for me to bring up a couple things. So thank you. I appreciate that.
I mean, maybe you think sometimes like what you're getting into when you get into the details, people aren't interested. I'm interested. I hope my audience is interested in budgets and online learning and all the other things that are going on.
Well, it's what, you think about it. It's what's going on.
Oh, yes, it is. So for those out there, it's been What's Going On. I'm your host, Hugo Fernandez, here on LaGuardia Web Radio, WLGR. My host today, the very open and honest President Adams, who's given us time out of his busy schedule to talk about a lot of the things that are happening here at the college and will be happening as we move forward. And hopefully we can have you back. I will warn you, I think my dance card may be full for May, and we're going to have to make a special time for you if you come at all, right? And good luck on the town hall without me. I know it's going to be hard to do it without me, but
it won't be the same.
Oh no, it won't. It won't be the same at all. And thanks to all of you for watching and listening. Mr. Pope, can you please take us out? Thanks and bye.
Bye.